As expected, Kim Plapuli, today's show was really an emotional show. It was just one of those shows where it almost felt like a walk down memory lane. As I said to you earlier on, today's show was more about supporting the mothers of those who are living with substance abuse. We did have a community member, her name Mantsakisi, who came through to talk about her journey with her 38-year-old who started abusing drugs at the age of 23. We looked into what made this young man to start using drugs at such a, well, it's considered a late age, considering that my mother started using drugs at the age of 14. So from this young man's point of view, basically it was a search for his father. As I said to you, there's always an emotional angle or an emotional cause for people to seek comfort in terms of substances. For this particular young man, it was the search for his biological father that led him into substance abuse. He started at the age of 23, which is strangely quite late. So you never know what will trigger someone to start abusing substances. But the mother narrated her journey from an emotional point of view. She went from anger to pain to embarrassment. And one of the things that we did address, I am a parent as I speak, and I think when my son does something that I don't expect him to do, the first thing that I do is I get into an angry mode. And what was highlighted by Gwen, who is the social worker who was with us in studio, is that as parents, we need to give ourselves time to actually come down from the anger, and so that we are able to have constructive conversations with our children when they do things like that. So to get into a confrontational situation with your child, if you discover that your child is abusing substance, is not the best way to deal with the condition, because if you are doing the conversation or having the conversation with the child while you are angry, chances are you'll start saying things that are not constructive, things that you may possibly regret. So the social worker did advise us today that it is best to give ourselves a day or two so that we have the conversations from a positive point of view, where we're asking questions that are constructive rather than accusing our children for what we find out. Mantsakis did go through the emotions of guilt as a parent, blaming herself for raising a child that she had such high hopes for, and she felt like she had failed not only herself but had also failed the child. So one of the most important things, like they say at SAA, put the oxygen first on yourself before you are able to help anyone else. With carrying such emotions of guilt and emotions of disappointment towards yourself, how do you then help somebody else when you haven't dealt with those emotions? So one of the most important thing that was highlighted as a tip for parents that are going through this kind of situation is that yes, you will blame yourself, but rather sit and deal with those emotions before you are able to help your child from an emotional point of view. The last thing that I take away from today's conversation is that acceptance is key, because if you are not accepting of the situation that you are in, you'll always be trying to fight it, and in fighting it, the other person who is going through it may not necessarily be ready to deal with it. So instead of you accepting, it becomes difficult for you to be able to support the person who is going through substance abuse. I'm hoping to stomach enough courage to rewrite what I went through today on my blog. So do visit www.dosesbyfaith.inc, where I'll be sharing more about what I discovered today. So some of the words that were used to describe the emotions associated with the discovery that the child was abusing substance was that she felt that society was judging her, although most of the time society does not necessarily judge you, but they basically want to support you. But you feel the embarrassment, you feel the disappointment, the failure, the pain, the anger. And organizations like Family Life, which is a division of SAMFA, are available to provide the kind of assistance that could help you deal with your emotions. We did touch on the fact that as an individual, you do not need to heal only from an emotional point of view, but you also need to heal from a spiritual point of view, because attacks like this do affect your morality, they do affect your spirituality, and you need to use support groups that are provided by organizations like FAMSA, where like-minded individuals that are going through the same thing get together and discuss how they are walking the journey. Remember, it's not easy to walk the journey all by yourself, but if you do have the assistance from other people that are experiencing similar situations, it just makes life a little bit easier. So let's learn to rely on one another and support one another as we go through life. Because, it takes a journey. Sorry, it takes a nation, not a journey. It takes a nation to actually build a child. So in this particular case, it would take a nation to actually build someone who's been broken or affected by substance abuse. So be that as it may, I hope that it was as constructive as it was. We had callers that called in to give advice. Some callers came in to say, you know what, society actually knows who these people are that are selling these substances to these children. And we need to just come up and report crime when we do see it. And yeah, it was quite a heated debate, and indeed a constructive debate. We're hoping that one day we'll get it right and we'll get it recorded on SoundCloud. Until then, these are the only ways that I will be able to make sure that you have access to the kind of information that we discuss on the Dose of Health by Faith show. Until next week, remember, a healthy nation is indeed a wealthy nation.